Tara Palmeri. Tara, thanks so much for being here.
Evan, thank you so much. What a pleasure to be here. And you're right, it is difficult for so many of these White House correspondents. I feel like they are just being battered around every single day by the president. And it's really unfortunate, but I am also so impressed with their professionalism and the way that they have just, taken it on the chin and just kept going. And I think, in this sort of crisis where a lot of people question, mainstream media, its value, whether it's being led by corporate forces that have, interests like mergers and acquisitions over the news. It's the people on the front lines that can be inspiring, I think, sometimes in these moments, because they seem to really still be pursuing what I see as, higher truth. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you started your career kind of more in that mainstream arena. You started, I believe, with the Washington Examiner and worked with, covering things, everything from the news and writing weekly columns to you covered some more tabloid things throughout your career as well. What was the original motivation that made you want to become a reporter and a journalist?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So my first job was actually at CNN as a production assistant. And I was like fetching coffees and getting scripts and, for some of like the biggest names out there now, like Don Lemon and Jim Acosta. And I was, fresh out of college. I actually graduated early to do that. And, it was a really tough time. It was 2008 and we were in the middle of financial crisis. So I was told, you only have a year to have this job. It's a freelance job, hourly, no benefits. And then I would network with a lot of the people, the editors that came through the green room. And that's how I met the editor of the Washington Examiner. And I said, listen, like, I'd be happy to freelance for you to write. I'd always been inspired since I was a young person by the Muckrakers at the turn of the 20th century and how they were able to use, you could say tabloid yellow journalism. Everyone forgets that Joseph Pulitzer, who, is the name behind the Pulitzer Prize, he used yellow journalism to cause real change. The Jungle by Upton Sinclair was, a fictional book, but it really changed the meatpacking industry because he went undercover to see exactly what was happening in the meatpacking industry in Chicago. Nellie Bly was another muckraker during this period of time who went undercover in the asylums to show that mental institutions were completely in disrepair and people were being treated terribly. We had health code. We didn't have health codes really in factories, which explains why there was the Triangle building that burned down in New York. But it was, journalists that went undercover and really tried to expose some of the worst of the robber barons, and really what we would call now like the oligarchs, and to really speak up for the little man, like the immigrants, the people living in the tenements. And I mean, those are my people, at least. That's how my family came to America. So I felt a kindred spirit for them. I saw the power of the pen. And I always believed that, even when I worked at the New York Post, there would be like a little dinkus when you had a story, and the follow-up story was about how what you reported led to a law to be changed. And it would say Post gets action. And to me, that was really rewarding, was to be able to use investigative journalism to expose injustice and to expose, corruption and problems. So I'm scrappy, I'm a Jersey girl, but I wasn't really, what led me to journalism wasn't flowery writing or, just sort of profiles, which I enjoy doing now at this point in my career, because I have those skills and I understand people more. And I think but when I started, I was just like, I want to kick up dirt and find corruption and expose it. Like almost like I could have probably been a prosecutor if I wasn't a journalist.
Yeah, I hear you. And that's awesome. I think that you made a really good point. I think that with those muckrakers and everything in the yellow journalism, there was kind of that ability to use scandal, like to get the headlines and to grab people's attention and then to draw them in towards like kind of the real story. Do you feel like that?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
that's
I
kind
mean,
of what
we
you
would
try to
have
do.
little like signs around the New York Post that like news doesn't have to be boring to be news, you know.
Mhm.
There's a culture there. I mean, I used to joke that it was a pirate ship. There were a lot of things wrong with it. I didn't always agree with the takes, you know, it has a rightward bent. And, you know, I didn't always agree with their political leanings or their political pages, but I felt like at their heart, they were a populist paper. They were people it was a paper that was read by, you know, the middle class, working class in Staten Island, but also Manhattan that liked the page 6 pages, you know what I mean? That like to read about their friends. So
Yeah.
it had that sensibility. And sometimes it's like you can't take yourself a little too seriously. And you know, Headless Man and Topless Bar. We used to have so much fun trying to come up with headlines, but of course the editors would always say, you know, they actually had headline writers in a separate place from us as writers, and we weren't even really allowed to suggest headlines. Actually, if you suggested a headline, you were more likely not to have it featured because
Really?
they were the creatives. I mean, they were the geniuses behind it all. But yeah, it was a really good experience. I feel like a lot of journalists during the years when I grew up, I'm in the business, you know, that was when blogging was really a thing, and people would take a story and they would sort of break down the story and write it about, you know, a rewrite with their own spin or twist or style or snark or this or that. But I learned like, go door knock, you know, go get the quote, go break the story, go find out the scoop, go dig, go investigate. Like I learned like kind of, you know, real investigative journalism. Get leads, break stories, not just write about other people's stories. And
Yeah.
that to me has driven me to get the scoop to try to break through. And you know, everybody has different talents, and some people are amazing at write beautiful analysis, have brilliant opinion pieces, great flowery language, beautiful profiles. But I was always sort of driven to the investigative journalism. So.
And that's something that I appreciate about you is that with like what you said about getting to the story, and you worked at the New York Post and it was a little bit more right leaning than you said, like your politics and things like that. And I think that a lot of reporters in this day and age, like with the polarization of the both sidesism and everything, especially women reporters, they get a lot of flack for who they talk to and everything. And I think that you get to the heart of the story and you're willing and ready to talk to everybody. You've talked to George Santos, Kat Abou-Ghazaleh, you talked to Michael Cohen, and you feel the heat of it afterwards, I'm sure, from people with one opinion or the other. Do you feel like since you've gone independent, do you feel that you have more freedom to talk to more people? Like you're not as like centered towards one story or another, or one aspect or angle of the story? Do you try to talk to a wide variety of people to get to what the heart of it is, you know?
Yeah, I think like I hope that what you get from my journalism is that I don't have a political agenda. My agenda is the truth. And if truth is against your political agenda, then I'm sorry. You know,
Exactly.
That is my agenda, is getting down to the bottom of it. And yeah, I can grill people, and some people might say, oh, you shouldn't platform George Santos. And to me, I'm like, George Santos is an avatar of our moment, of this post-truth moment. And like, to me, I wanted to know, like, how did you get this pardon? Like, do you think that it's all about loyalty? Did you love Trump enough? I mean, are you sorry? And some people are like, I don't even want to hear from him. And it's like, okay, fine. You don't want to hear from him. You don't have to. Kat Abou-Ghazaleh, like, you know, I don't agree with the fact that she got, you know, prosecuted and got a felony, but I had to ask her, you know, what do you think about it? What were you feeling? Like, you know, just basic what, when, where, why questions. And in the case of Michael Cohen, and that was a bit of more of an antagonistic interview as well. I mean, not all of my interviews are antagonistic, but like I go where the story leads. And when he said, oh yeah, there was one Epstein situation we had to deal with, I was like, wait, what? Tell me what happened. We have never heard this before. You know, especially about a story that the president is so close-lipped about. And he was working for him as his fixer during the time when Katie Johnson case was going to be, I guess, at that time, she was going to, she filed in three times her lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's unclear what she was planning to do with that. But still, I felt that, I went where it was supposed to go. You always are going to take risks in this media age. Everybody has everybody has an opinion. I don't believe in not platforming people, but I think if you platform them and they have an agenda and they have an opinion, you need to grill them. Like, if you give them the platform, there has to be a purpose for it. That isn't just to let them spread lies or to, so it's like, would I have Nick Fuentes on my show? Maybe, if I could have the ability to like really grill him and understand, like, where does a man with the last name Fuentes become a white supremacist? You know what I mean? Like,
you're not going to do the Tucker Carlson thing,
his white supremacy or elevate his claims. So, it's interesting because like before social media, before we all had our own platforms, people like Barbara Walters had the chance to interview, 100 most interesting people or whatever she would do. And, some of them were criminals. Some of them were serial killers. She interviewed Donald Trump and she pointed out, like, you are not rich. You are bankrupt. And she laid it all out there methodically. And sure, she had the support of a ton of producers that prepped her and people in her ear. And she was a killer. Not taking it away from her. But nobody ever said, how dare you platform him, Barbara Walters? No.
Exactly.
They wanted to hear from these evil people because they wanted to, not necessarily saying Trump as the evil person, but they wanted to hear from these people. And they trusted her to go there and ask the tough questions. But now it's like, no, you're platforming them. I can't even listen to you. Even if they did listen, they might hear that, yeah, no, actually, I'm asking them really hard questions.
Yeah, exactly. And there are these little, like, kind of safe pockets and safe spaces for people where they're going to get the information that they want and everything. And, you have done everything with corporate media. You've worked in all kinds of different places. What was it that was it a jump, or was it like just a natural progression to go out on your own and do sort of the independent thing?
Honestly, I saw people like you, Evan, and seeing your success and seeing others on Substack and YouTube. And I had sort of been slow walking my way into this. Once I left Politico and I was at Puck. Puck was new media. It's a newsletter. It's not that far off in Substack. Then I had a show on The Ringer. So an election show. It was a podcast, but it wasn't on YouTube. And so I was like, in this age, I need to be on YouTube. I mean, everybody's on YouTube. And I felt like Substack, I'm seeing such brilliant journalists on Substack and commentators and really great content. And I was like, well, why not just go there? So, in a way, I just felt like it was a natural evolution for me to keep going in a more independent route. And, now this is all mine and there's no editor. So if anyone's mad at me for what I do, it's because I did it, it's like, it's my own, this is my operation. There's no one saying like, yeah, I don't like that story, or, enough of the Epstein, or we don't like, this or that. I make the decision. And I think that's really gratifying. I'm sure you feel that way as well. And it kind of creates a real closeness with your audience because you hear from them too. What they want to know more about. You're your own editor-in-chief. And so that's a really exciting thing. And it can only grow from here. And I hope, that I'll bring on more people who are like-minded, independent, investigative journalists.
That's so awesome. And, you've had a lot of strong women on your show as well. And Sally Quinn was one of them. And I'm not an expert or anything, so you're going to have to fill me in. But it seems like you were a pretty big fan of hers. And from what I've read, it kind of seems like she was somebody who wasn't just like reporting on Washington, D.C. and everything, but she kind of held all the info and the gossip for the town. And, she seemed like a woman that everybody trusted with information and secrets. Is that someone that you admire? And do you see yourself becoming that kind of figure eventually?
No, I mean, I think Sally is she's like from another era. You know what I mean? She was the great hostess of Washington, D.C. She is a columnist for a newspaper, the Washington Post. She writes about religion. But yes, she likes to convene people for her salons. And she likes to feel, she wants to be in the mix. She wants to know everyone. And she kind of is socialite, you could say. I don't consider myself to be a socialite by any means. I don't have salon dinners. I don't convene, policymakers. I'm not someone that you have to shake a hand to get into the next layer of the inner circle. I do like information like she does. I mean, I think if you're in this game, you want to know the scoop. You want to know what's going on. I think I admire how she's been such a connector and how she's, these are women who have come before me and they did it in their own way, in the way that they could for their time. I mean, she worked at the Washington Post as a secretary, worked her way up into be an opinion columnist. I mean, that was a big deal, and I think for those figures, it's always good to kind of recognize them for who they are, while also acknowledging that we're from a different era. I'm not going to, who knows if there will actually be print newspapers by the time I'm her age, yeah, I thought she's interesting, and she has a book coming out, and she always has so much stuff to say, like she just has the gift of gab. So it was interesting to have her on, and I think people take her seriously because of the fact that she could bring together, the vice president with, the Speaker of the House at her home. And she was married to Ben Bradley, who was the executive editor at the Washington Post during Watergate. And, she really is someone that if you want to become a player, you have to have a dinner at her house. For what it's worth, I've never had dinner at her house, but I was invited once. I couldn't make it.
But you're still kind of making it in your own way. You know what I mean? You're kind of taking that recipe of like bringing everybody together, and you do it like digitally. And, it's really cool to see. And I think especially right now where there's this large scale attack on women, especially with Trump, I think it has a lot more to do with how his health is failing and stuff, and he's feeling a lot more pressure personally, and he's going back towards instincts, which includes lashing out at women. And women are usually at the forefront of asking him these hard questions. What do you think it is, or what inspires you to be so bold and fearless in asking the questions and like just not giving a damn? You know what I mean? It seems like it's always women that are willing to go the extra mile and just bluntly ask him the question. What do you think it is that like creates that? Is it just the pure strength of women?
I think we have to prove ourselves that we're tough enough to be in the crowd. This was a man's world for so long, especially in media. I mean, right now, obviously, you can see from the press pool that it's largely dominated by women, but it's, we're trying to show like we belong here too. Like we can ask the tough questions. We're not soft. We're not docile. We're not afraid. And that's not, I don't want to talk about gender roles, but that's sort of how women have been, that's how we've been expected to be for a very long time. So I think for female journalists, we just say it and ask it and do it because it's our way of proving we deserve to be there. And we can ask I think when we ask a question, you have to remember you're not asking it for yourself. You're asking it for everyone watching, for everyone listening that doesn't get to be in the room and have that access that you have. So that's what you have to always remember. And you only get those, and you're so privileged to have that chance to do that. And you don't want to give up that chance, that right to be able to do it. So I think that's a big part of it. I was really impressed by Mary Bruce. She's a former colleague from ABC News. Trump was like tearing into her, and she's just such a consummate pro. She didn't flinch.
Was she the one at Mar-a-Lago that he called her stupid or something like that when she asked the question?
Yeah, Caitlyn takes it. They all do. I mean, I don't like when he attacks people for the way they look, their intelligence. He does seem to go after women a lot more, but I do think there's probably a part of him that's also thinking, because think about when he grew up. Like, why are all these women? Why am I surrounded by all these women asking me what I'm doing? This is not the way the power structure was supposed to be.
And I think it's laziness on the part of men too. I mean, part of the reason I was stupid enough to believe that I can do all this and everything and try to get my thoughts out there is I think the media has been infected by a lot of lazy men that want access, and they want to be in the room, but they don't understand the responsibility like women do to ask the question, and you're asking it on behalf of other people. And I think that there's a laziness in the media on behalf of men. I'm just saying this, that I've recognized it, that they don't say anything when he says stupid stuff like quiet piggy, and they don't speak up. And I think that they're getting left behind. And so I just figured, I was just dumb enough to figure, why not step up and try to ask the truth and speak up for women that are doing the right thing and try to elevate other men, you know what I mean? Because I think that the media has been infected with just this laziness of thinking. We see it with the brosphere and everything. And I respect a lot of the women that are doing it right now. You see Jennifer Welch and everything, and it seems like you guys are always ready and willing to call out the bullshit, to ask the tough questions. And especially with you, with the Epstein files and your reporting and advocacy on behalf of the victims and the survivors. How do you balance seeking truth from powerful people and giving voice and dignity to the survivors at the same time? Like, how is it to balance those two things?
I feel incredibly privileged that they would tell me their stories. I feel really privileged that I was able to spend time with Virginia Giuffre, who really was a leader in this story and making sure that we even, sorry, one second.
No, you're okay. No worries at all. You are in the middle of very busy, stressful life stuff, so I completely understand.
No, yeah, I'm in the middle of a move. So I just got the word that my car is going to be picked up soon, but in an hour. So we have good time. Sorry about the phone call. This is live. So yeah, I feel incredibly privileged that, again, that I was able to hear these stories. I felt a bond with Virginia and the other survivors. There are women who are close to my age. I know what their lives were like when they were first trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. We were listening to the same music. We were, and I've seen how their lives have become derailed and broken from all of it. And the struggle that they have, the trauma. I've sat across from them at dinners, and some of them came out for the first time in the past year, which I'm so proud of, and stood on Capitol Hill and spoke out. But for a long time, they didn't want their faces out there. And I understand. I mean, there's so much shame wrapped up in these sex crimes, and they so badly want to tell even more, but they're afraid, and I don't blame them. And they've already put so much out on the line. So, all I can do is be there for them. And I've always been really drawn to stories about sex crimes against women and men. It's not just women that, but really they're power imbalance stories. It's the same type of story that we talk about with politics. Like, I've always been drawn to power and how it can be corrupted. And this is an example of it. And against children is like one of the worst crimes that can ever happen, that can happen. And, of course, like, there are still sources. So I have to triple fact check them with Virginia. We'd never used her as a single source on the Broken Jeffrey Epstein podcast. We always double sourced her. At the end of the day, like, credibility is everything. We have to, make sure that everything stands up. The allegations are really, really severe. And at the same time, these powerful people have been protected because of their money. And you can even see from the stories that are coming out now, from the files that are starting to dribble out, that they called these girls prostitutes, 14-year-olds. I mean, they did it. That he was sentenced with procuring a minor for prostitution. You're starting to see how they really went out of their way. Alan Dershowitz, the lawyer for Jeffrey Epstein, to go through these girls' MySpace pages and show that they were drinking at a party at 14 or out with their friends. They said, "What do you think the word blaze means?" And it's like, they're 14 years old. Who cares?
Yeah, we were kids right around
they
then.
were living, in chaste, like they were living in they were living like nuns or they were being teenage girls. They did not belong in the home of a 50-something-year-old man. I'm sorry. There's something wrong with this. I don't care who these girls are. And to try to use that against them, I find to be so despicable. And yeah, I feel really lucky that they would share their stories with me. So yeah.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's a story that everybody can kind of see a part of themselves in. Like you said, you were right around the same age. I believe that we're around the same age. I graduated high school in 2006. So all those girls were, you know, people that could have been at the same parties as us and everything.
Yep.
We were just normal kids and had the expectation of anonymity. I mean, social media wasn't what it is today back then.
No.
We just had MySpace and you had your top 8 and everything.
But that shouldn't be used as a reason to not protect these girls.
Exactly.
You know, literally the deputy prosecutor in the state case said there are no victims here because these girls had MySpace pages that insinuated that they were making out with boys and drinking and maybe smoking pot. Like, that's
what they're supposed to be doing.
They're still children. It was, you know, the law is the law. It doesn't matter if you're, you know,
the president or a billionaire or whoever. Yeah,
but
exactly.
The truth is that these girls, they came from the wrong side of the track or the wrong side of the intercoastal. He was in Palm Beach, wealthy Palm Beach man. And these were girls that were in a high school where he created a pyramid scheme, recruiting them, getting them to bring friends of friends for $200. I mean, and for them, $200 was probably more than their father made in a week. And so it was just, it was really horrible how he preyed on the vulnerabilities of these girls. So many of them. The FBI estimates as many as 1,000 girls. And we've only heard 3 dozen. And if you notice, a lot of them were older. The recruiter, a lot of the ones that come forward because they were able to process it. But the really young ones, they had a really hard time with it still.
Yeah, definitely. And it goes back to show the strength of women in media, because I believe, forgive me if I get her name wrong, but it was Julie K. Brown was the one that broke the story, like in Palm Beach originally with the Epstein thing.
She went through, I mean, what Julie did was amazing. She basically went through all of the court files and really fully reported out this sweetheart deal and the injustice. Her series was called Perversion of Justice. And she did this for the Miami Herald. And she interviewed the survivors, crucially, on video with her videographer, who really deserves a lot of credit as well. Julie and I worked on Brooke and Jeffrey Epstein together. She was the executive producer of the podcast. But yeah, she did a lot of the legwork, looking through thousands and thousands of files and putting together a story that showed a perversion of justice from the state level to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and how he just got a slap on the wrist, 13 months in a county jail with work release, ankle bracelet, and able to actually continue abusing girls while on work release. So, you know, without Julie, I don't think anyone would understand how much Alex Acosta did such a grave injustice. It's incredible.
Yeah, she definitely did great work with it. And I mean, I do a couple newsletters for Lincoln Square, and I know that she just recently did a discussion with Rick Wilson about the whole thing. But we've also got to give credit to you too, because I think that you are the reason that so many of these women feel comfortable telling these stories, because of the work that you did with Virginia Giuffre, and to go around the country with her and to take one woman and to knock on doors and to be there for her and to just show up for her, you know what I mean? And want to tell her story. I think that you are a central part of why we're seeing this level of transparency with the Epstein story, and with, you know, people feeling women feeling comfortable enough to come forward, because that's a big thing. Because like you said, I don't mean to ramble here, but like you said, you know, they were 14 when this happened, and I've gone through therapy and stuff for trauma with the Army and everything. And one of the things that I learned is that if you're at that age, you know, your brain doesn't fully develop until you're 25. When you're at that age and you're from one of those broken homes and you don't have an adult parent that intervenes and teaches you like, hey, this is wrong. This is not supposed to happen. These are not normal relationships. They're never able to fully process anything in their life anyway successfully going forward unless they have like intensive therapy. So Virginia's entire life was probably just her trying to survive, not only Epstein, but her trying to survive every minute of every day. And I think
it was horrific. I mean, I saw it up close, and and how everything triggered her in terms of like seeing his plane on the tarmac at the Palm Beach airport, going to people's homes. Like it was physically triggering. Like I saw her body, like she literally would get ill. And thank you for saying that. You know, it's interesting because at the time I was in a weird place myself, like just with my career. And I was like, I just left ABC News. It just didn't feel right to me. Like, and people were like, who leaves a White House correspondent job? But like, I wasn't able to do the kind of job that I wanted. Like, wasn't able to do what I wanted to do, which was like investigative reporting and breaking news and like digging around. I felt like I was just standing in front of the White House, like reading off headlines that were sort of like pre-written, and just felt that my biggest part of my job was just sounding good and looking good. And it just didn't feel right for the person I explained to you who I am. And I left, and everyone's like, who leaves like early? This is weird. And I felt the same way. I'm like, am I an idiot? And I'm just like hiking around in the desert being like, God, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing here? And I thought maybe I'll go to another network and they'll give me more like leeway and I'll be able to do the kind of reporting I want to do. And it just like, it didn't happen. Instead, I got a call to do this podcast. And then I spent this time with Virginia, and I confided in her too. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, but here I am with you. And like, we're on this journey together, and we're going to try to put together the broken pieces of your life. And like, we bonded through that. And it was just like, and seeing how she reacted to people from her past with just like such grace and such like gratefulness that these people would just acknowledge her, even though I thought to myself like that they were almost complicit in the crime, that they were enablers, and she just wanted their help so that she could tell her story. She really inspired me. But yeah, it was a very weird time. And then COVID hit, and I was just in my friend's barn for a long time because I broke my elbow and I needed a place to live with my dog because I couldn't walk. And I was like, I had no one to help. And I'm just reading through all these horrific files, like the files that Julie put together so we could do this podcast. And it's just so heartbreaking and dark. And I was just like, what is why am I here? What am I doing with my life? And then it didn't, like, I knew I just kept doing it, feeling that there was a purpose, knowing that there was a purpose, but not understanding what the end goal was. The podcast came out and it did okay. It wasn't like a huge hit or anything, but it did fine. A lot of people reached out to me though, and they said it made a lot of sense that mattered to me, and it mattered to Virginia and the survivors, which is most important. And
of course,
then they asked me at Sony to do another show on Ghislaine Maxwell, and that one was a hit, like across the world, top podcasts for weeks. And I was like, okay, fine. Everybody wants to know more about this lady. They don't care about the survivors. So Power of the Maxwells is a huge hit. I don't understand why. I didn't spend half as much time like traveling around the world because it was the middle of COVID. So a lot of it I had to do without much like on the ground reporting, like without the shoe leather reporting. But then it's amazing how, about 5 years later, once I've started my own independent journalism organization, that this story would come back to life, and that I could use the great reporting that I had in the background to elevate it. It felt like it was synchronicity, because I don't know that if I worked at another news organization, they would have quite understood or appreciated what I could bring and would see the value in it the same way. So it felt like it was the right thing. And I still covered it while Biden was president. I wrote actually a really big piece for Politico magazine about Epstein, called "The Women Who Enabled Jeffrey Epstein" for Politico magazine. And it just there wasn't the same like
energy behind it.
Yeah, it wasn't the same. But I would still comment on it, and I would still write about it. And I would go on, foreign TV like BBC, because they would want me to come on and comment. But it just it's interesting how the timing worked out with the synchronicity of starting my own outlet and it all kind of coming out at the same time and having the freedom to pursue and not have to ask for permission. Because I don't think people understand that with like journalists, like they're really only able to do what their editors and their bosses will let them.
Yeah, exactly. And I know we're getting close on time here. One of the things that I wanted to ask you is about that is a young girl, I've got a 13-year-old niece who's really like interested in politics and the news and things like that. Say that she wants to become Tara Palmeri one day. Excuse me. What do you think that the best route is for women like wanting to get into journalism? Is it that corporate route where they kind of make those connections and everything and then go out on their own like you did, or is it straight into independent media and doing the stuff that you're interested in? What advice would you have for young women who want to do what you do?
So the great question. Thank you. Because I've actually thought about that myself, because I've got an all-star intern, Abby Baker, on my team, and you see her because we share bylines. She does really great reporting, and I'm trying to nurture her and her journalism because I do think she has a lot of talent, and she just has it innately in her. I think, for everyone who has that in them, they should keep at it. I see the value in mainstream news. I do. I see the value in corporate journalism in the sense that you get to work with elders, you could say, people who have more experience in terms of investigative reporting.
There's built-in mentors.
Yeah, you have mentors there.
Yeah.
You can learn the basics of reporting. You can learn like when is something safe to publish, because that's a really big thing. Like, I mean, I think I've been doing this now for 15 years. And, I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, I know when something feels safe to publish. I feel good about it. I can do my own standards, editing, that kind of stuff. But, for someone who's new, they don't know the rules yet. They don't understand the game yet. And it can be risky, especially if they're going down more of the reporting lane rather than the commentary lane. I think if you're doing commentary, you're probably okay. I think you need to be careful and understand like the line between defamation and and like just general commentary. And I've seen a lot of young pundits, you could say, YouTube stars, like out there. But I think if you're doing kind of more of like a chat show and you're probably fine. But I think if you want to be an investigative journalist, I think you probably should have a few years of experience in a newsroom, or at least working under someone like me or someone else who can really nurture you and help you learn the ropes so you don't make mistakes. It's just like, there are pitfalls. It's expensive. It takes time. It's, and I think you have to be, guided a little bit. Like, I'm grateful for the time I had in corporate media, but
and if you can, I guess if you're going to go into independent media, get as lucky as Abby is and find somebody as great as you to learn from under.
Yeah. I mean, I hope to one day have an army of great independent journalists underneath me that are just like, maybe I'll be the editor in chief and like, go find stories, dig in, have fun.
Absolutely.
That's a dream. So we'll see. Hopefully that happens. If not, I'll be here regardless.
You still be doing the work, telling the truth, right?
Yeah, Evan, thank you so much for having me and for featuring me in my work. It really means a lot to me.
I appreciate you so much. I know you're a busy woman. You are a superstar. I think it's great work that you're doing, not only advocating for, you advocate for victims, you advocate for stories, and you advocate for people like me just trying to tell the truth and get their voice out there. And I really, really, really appreciate you. And anybody who's watching, please go subscribe to Tara. She has the Red Letter on Substack, right? The Tara Palmeri Show on YouTube. And they can find you on social media at Tara Palmeri and everything.
Yep. Yeah. And Evan, keep rocking it. I mean, you're crushing Substack, and
I'm trying.
Yeah, I love your vulnerability and your inquisitiveness, and I think that's why you have such a big following, that people sense that you're like them, that you understand them, and that you are you don't want the bullshit, which I think
It's
is like,
okay for guys to not be douchebags and just be kind and empathetic. You know what I mean? That's all I want to do. That and tell some truth, and we
yeah,
are good to go. I
yeah, no,
appreciate you, Tara.
I support the cause.
Absolutely. You take care. Thank you so much for joining
Thanks,
us.
guys. Cheers.
All right. Bye.
Bye. That was another episode of the Tara Palmeri Show. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you like this show, please rate it, subscribe, follow, share it with all of your friends. Please leave comments. If you like my reporting, you can go to tarapalmeri.com. That's TARAPALMERI. You can sign up for the red letter. That's where you can get all of my exclusive reporting and my independent journalism straight to your inbox. It is how you can support my independent journalism. And I will keep at it thanks to you. I want to thank my producer, Eric Abenate. I want to thank Abby Baker, who does my research and my social media, and Adam Stewart on the thumbnails. I'll be back again this week. I'm thankful for all of you. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving week and you are able to take it a little slower.